Okay, so I've had a little technical difficulty there. Yeah, I think it's all working now. I'm gonna give it a couple of minutes, make sure all the kinks are all worked out here. I'm just checking a few things. This is the first time that I've ever gone live on YouTube. I'm looking at myself here because the way this layout is in this program I'm using is a little bit strange. I'm not used to the the live layout looks a little bit different than when I'm just recording it. So give me a few minutes and I'll get kind of used to it. I'm still working out all the kinks here. So all right, I think everything looks good. So I'm gonna do this here. One second. All right. We'll get the show on the road here because there is a lot of information to cover. So welcome. Another extraordinary episode of Howard's Blend. Boy, this is May the 30th, 2022. I am live on the YouTubes. This is a first for, if y'all just tuned in, this is the first for ever that I've ever been live on YouTube for. So from this episode on, if I am ever doing a solo episode, which is like a supplement talk, which is what this is going to be, or talking about any topic, whether it be personal development, whatever, talking about something that we discussed in the Five Deep podcast, which I'll plug later on or throughout probably. That I'll be doing it live here on YouTube. So that is a change for 2022, even though we're almost 6 months in. Better late than never. And going onward, I'll be doing that. Just dipping my toe in the water, trying new things. So I figured I would go live. My accountability partners, Rodney Sadler, Mark Jeffrey, Lee Meekin, and last but definitely not least, Harmony the Bliss Broker, Garcia. They're all been pushing us to go live to do this stuff. So I said, hey, let's give it a shot. So yeah, that's the first big change for this podcast for 2022. And I just woke up, folks. So I was up late last night. So I am still a little bit tired, but I think we're going to be okay. Everything's going to be all right. Let's see if there's anything else I want to start get into it. Yeah, so I do want to say from the outset that this podcast is strictly for informational slash educational purposes only. All right. We're going to be going, well, in my opinion, we're going to be going deep into the science. We're going to be, it may get pretty, it's deep for me, I should say. So we get deep into it. And I, I don't want anybody to take my advice or anything that I say as a substitute for talking with a medical professional because this can affect your health depending on your medical situations, whatever. It could, you know, it, so definitely consult with the doctor first before stopping a supplement regimen, starting or stopping a diet, whatever. Do I'm not a professional in this, all right? Another thing I want to mention is I do my due diligence to make sure I get the information right. With that said, I still get information wrong. All right. Part of this episode, there's going to be a chunk, like kind of one half or three quarters of the way through the episode, where I'm actually going to spend some time to correct information that I gave in the previous episode on choline, which I'll get on to that in a second here. So I do make mistakes. So, with that said, I do my best to do my due diligence to make sure the information is correct. but there are times where I catch my mistakes, like I have with this episode and other episodes where I catch my mistakes. But yeah, if you all out there, if you're here on the live, and I actually need to give me a second, I need to switch over to the chat so I can see if anybody's chiming in. If you all hear something that I say is wrong, please let me know in the chat. If you're watching this on YouTube or whatever platform after the fact, and you're like, whoa, Howard, what you said there's not correct, then put a comment in there. Hit me up on Instagram at Howard's Blend. You should see it. Well, let's see, right about there. Or at least for me, it shows up right about there at Howard's Blend. And shoot me an email, howard at howardsblend.com. I use that specifically for like business purposes. So shoot me an email. And if I'll look it up, and if it's correct, I'll do another video. Come on here and, hey, all you've listened to the podcast normally, I talk about John Doe in Cincinnati. John Doe in Cincinnati got it right. I'm here to correct the record. It's not about an issue of, I'll just say it's more of an issue of, I want to make sure the information is as valid as possible, um, for you all out there and for me, because it's a learning process for me. Reading all this stuff is just fascinating, and there's just so much information. And I figure while I'm learning the information, I want to pass it on to you, so you will be a more informed consumer when you go buy supplements, or when you're thinking about buying supplements, just to have some idea of what it does, and also to inspire you all to take responsibility for your health and to look up the supplements yourself. Let me go deeper into it and see what it is, because it's really fascinating stuff. So what's this episode about? So we're going to be talking about three, 1, 2, 3, or as my son goes, 1, 2, 3. He can't do the ring finger yet. We're going to be talking about three choline supplements. So about maybe, geez Louise, like maybe fall, maybe it was like fall of last year, maybe early winter of last year, I had an episode of the podcast titled Choline on My Mind. It's on my YouTube channel, the video portion, audio portions on all major podcast platforms. In that episode, we talk about the cholinergic system, acetylcholine. It was kind of we covered a lot of information. I'll just say it at that. This episode is kind of a follow up to it, because a lot of the information we talked about in that episode, we're going to be talking about in this episode. Pardon me, the allergies are getting to me. So, the way I formatted this episode, or at least I plan to format it, is that choline on my mind, the previous episode, is not a prerequisite to this. You should be able to, or at least that's the plan, fingers crossed, you should be able to follow along in this episode. And yeah, it shouldn't be any issues with it. I'm going to be sharing, or at least the plan is, I've tested this out, so at least it worked when I tested it. Some diagrams, etc., to help explain it. And I'll be taking my time to kind of go over the diagram, because I'm using the audio to put in a podcast format. So people are going to be listening to it. So I want to do my best to try to describe it, to give them like a mental picture of what we're talking about. So I think, yeah, I think we got it all covered. Let's see if it comes in here. Alrighty, ready. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Um, I have the live up here as well. I'm still working out all the kinks. I'm using Riverside FM, and it's what I use to go live. So I'm working all the kinks out. I don't know if there's a delay, if I have it set in here. I don't think I have a delay set in YouTube, but I see that Harmony, the Bliss Broker, has chimed in saying hi, hello. Doesn't come in my chat. Like I said, I'm working all the kinks out, but I think the most important thing right now is that I can see your chats. I'll just occasionally look over, but I can see that we're live. So that's the most important thing. So, all right, let's get started. Like I said, I have lost actually the first page of notes. I don't know where it is, but there's like 8 pages of notes here. A lot of notes. Hopefully I won't need them. I have them as a backup. Uh, but it's been a lot of studying. All right. So the first supplement we're going to talk about here today is choline bitartrate. And in fact, I have right here, I prepared for this. I have a bottle of choline bitartrate. This is a new brand, a new label that has just come out on the market. Collaboration between Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner. It's called Acme Supplements. You probably can't see it. I don't know if the camera picks it up. Acme Supplements choline bitartrate. All right. Glorious looking bottle there. Wonderful label. They had to hire several graphic designers to get this done. Now, looking at the label, I noticed the supplement facts are wrong, so I'm going to have to contact Wile E. Coyote or Mr. Coyote because that's a violation of FDA guidelines. Whenever I try to talk to Roadrunner, I just get beep, 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 beep. So, whatever. All right. So, choline bitartrate. This is not a real supplement, folks. All right. If you didn't get the joke. Choline bitartrate is a combination of choline, duh, and a conjugate base of tartaric acid. So let me go back. Let me reverse here a little bit. Choline bitartrate in total is what's called an amine salt. So we're going to cover all this. So choline bitartrate, you have choline and then a conjugate tartaric acid. So we'll start with tartaric acid first. What is tartaric acid? It's a compound that's found in many fruits. You have like citric acid, which is found like in citrus fruits, lemons, limes, etc. Well, tartaric acid is found in other fruits. It's in, trying to remember off the top of my head, it's in like berries, strawberries, etc. If you do any reading on it, you'll see it often referred to being in grapes. And we're going to get into kind of a little bit of like the winemaking process because that's mentioned as well. So tartaric acid is usually associated with grapes if you do any type of reading on it. All right. So we know that. All right. So conjugate base, what does that mean? Conjugate base. So this is where we're going to show our first diagram here. So wish me luck here as we try to do it. I'm going to have to share my whole screen so you'll see my wonderful screen. And then I will do this. All right. Hopefully you'll be able to see that. And I'm checking the live feed to see if it comes through. Of tartaric acid right here. All right. These here, so you have this OH, 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 OH in 4 different places. Those are, I'm not a master at chemistry, so last time I took chemistry was in friggin' high school. So those are hydroxyl groups. All right. So keep that in mind. This is tartaric acid. There are 4 hydroxyl groups. All right, let me stop sharing here. What is that? And then now I'm going to bring up another diagram. Give me a second. I have too many windows open, folks. Too many windows open. That's what I want right there. Maybe next time, learning curves, maybe next time I should bring these images up in my browser because it does allow me to share the browser window and it'll probably be easier to do it that way, but oh well. We're already in it, so no big deal. All right, let me share my screen again. I gotta click that. So, all right, I can see if it's sharing correctly here. All right, that should be sharing. Let me put it up all the way. There we go. This is a molecule of choline bitartrate. Choline is up here. About that right. All right. This is bitartrate down here. So if we notice here, there are only 3 hydroxyl groups. 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen because all right, so we're back. So tartaric acid has 4 hydroxyl groups. Bitartrate has 3. Right? What is meant by a conjugate of tartaric acid is, let's say you have tartaric acid with its 4 hydroxyl groups, at least on the left. Bitartrate with only 3. What's happening is what's called a proton. It's being removed from and then trait. All right. So essentially, they can flip just by that one ion. It can go from tartaric acid on the right over to bitartrate, and now comes tartaric acid and tartaric acid B. That's what it's meant by conjugate. At least that's how I understand it. Is they can go back and forth just by the change of one atom there. That's a conjugate base. Right? So now we go back to what I said of choline bitartrate. It's an amine salt. What the heck does amine salt mean? Well, we'll start with salt. By salt, Howard, do you mean table salt, like what you put on your French fries? Well, no and yes. And I say it in that way for a particular reason. No, when they say it's amine, like table salt. No. Yes, in that table salt is a salt. In chemistry, a salt is a compound that combines the positive charge of what's called and the negative charge of an anion. So when I say salt is table salt is a salt, the positive charge is sodium, Na. The negative charge is chlorine, Cl, negative. You combine those together, sodium chloride, table salt, it is a salt. All right. Amine. So amine basically is a derivative of ammonia. And if I'm remembering this right, this is strictly off my memory. Ammonia is 3, so it's an atom of nitrogen and 3 atoms of hydrogen. It's that stuff that you can buy it in the bottle to clean like your bathroom. Got that powerful smell that wakes you up. That's ammonia, NH3. So I'm going to share another. Let's see if yeah, that's what I want to share. Okay, I want to make sure I'm sharing the right screen here. So we're going to share my entire screen again. Sometimes it takes a minute for it to come up. I will give it a second. So I believe, let me minimize it to make sure it is. Yeah, it's on there. Okay. It just delays a little bit on my end. We're not going to worry about this bottom part here, trimethylamine. We're going to talk about that later. This is trimethylammonium. So again, is a derivative of ammonia, right? So NH3. This here, this trimethylammonium here, this is an amine. This is also, let me minimize this. If we go back to this, there we go. This is the trimethylammonium here of choline bitartrate. It is part of the choline molecule. There's a trimethylammonium. I don't remember the whole name. It's like trimethylammonium, blah, 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 blah. I don't remember it, but yeah, the important thing is this is the trimethylammonium part here. So is an amine. And let me bring this up here. Nope, sorry, wrong screen. Yeah. This you uh, three methyl groups, which I talked about in the previous episode. So I'm going to try to describe it just to make sure people understand if they're listening. Basically, you have nitrogen. In three sides of the nitrogen, you have a methyl group, which is CH3, so an atom of carbon and three atoms of hydrogen, and then you have a hydrogen at the top, or I should say at the fourth connection to the nitrogen. Now, just based on what we were talking about previously with conjugate base, amine, and trimethylammonium, I guess in this case, they're conjugates. So I believe trimethylamine, I may be wrong on this, is the conjugate base of trimethylammonium. All right. So it's a little bit interesting there. Okie dokie. So let me stop sharing. All right. So back to it. So essentially, my whole point with saying this is that the choline molecule itself is the pardon me, I hit the microphone, is the cation. Okay. The bitartrate is the anion. Right? Those two together, positive and negative, you a salt that uses choline and the conjugate base of tartaric acids. Pretty sure I explained that. Again, hit me up with any questions you have on it. I will do my best to answer. So I guess the big question is why? Why are this way? Why are you mixing choline with this conjugate base of tartaric acid, putting them together? Why not just use choline? The reason being is because when you use this salt, this bitartrate, it improves. So basically, like dissolving, like in fluids, the idea of dissolving in the body's liquids, and it improves absorbability, improves bioavailability. That's the reason why it is used that way. I'll give you a couple of examples, real world examples. So, baking. So, in the wine making process, when grapes have to be fermented to make wine, a substance, potassium bitartrate, it is a salt. Potassium's the cation, bitartrate's the anion. Bitartrate is also known as, AKA, cream of tartar, which I think is used in baking for like anti-caking or what's that? What's that stuff like a thickening agent? Not sure. I remember when I was a kid, and I would go with my mom to the grocery store, and we would see I would see in the baking aisle a container of a cream of tartar, and I always thought as a kid, like, oh, I guess that's what they use to make tartar sauce, like to dip your thing like that. So, but no, I mean maybe it is, I don't know, but as far as I know, no, it is not used to make tartar sauce. A salt that is used that people could probably use every day, and they didn't even think about it. Now, in the medical field, I'll give you like more of a professional. Vicodin. And I think one of our episodes of Five Deep, Harmony, the bliss broker Garcia, talked about how she was taking Vicodin. I forgot the context in which it was. Well, Vicodin combines hydrocodone, and I think there's also acetaminophen, which is like Tylenol, bitartrate. It uses the conjugate base of tartaric acid, which is bitartrate, and then combine that with hydrocodone in this case, and then you get a salt. So medical companies, or I guess pharmaceutical companies, use it as well to improve bioavailability. All right, so that's a long way of explaining what choline bitartrate is, I guess, on a molecular level, and the reason why it's that way. So something else I want to mention is all these three supplements, I'm going to be going through like what I have as like positives and negatives of it. So I'm going to count that for choline bitartrate, me supplements, brand new brand. I'm going to count that as a positive because, mixing these two together, creating this amine salt, and it improves bioavailability, which is good. That's what you want. When you take your supplements, you want it to be, you want your body to be able to utilize as much of it as possible. And that's what you're paying your money for. It's what you're taking it for. So I'm going to mark that ching in the positive category. Another positive is the choline content by weight. So let's just say this, I didn't put it on here, but, oh, pardon me. Um, they didn't put it on your acne supplements. Let's say this choline bitartrate is Jesus, that didn't focus too well. All right, let's just say it's 1,000 milligram capsules. All right. Well, choline bitartrate is about 41% choline by weight. So out of that 1,000 milligram capsule, about 410 milligrams of it is actual choline. One second. I had to get some lemonade there. Throat's getting dry. Well, some of you might be thinking, wait a second, 41% choline. I mean, Howard, I'm buying choline bitartrate in order to get choline. How is 41% choline by weight? How is that, um, you know, how is that a benefit? Well, I'll tell you right now, the second ingredient or the second supplement we're going to be talking about, CDP-choline, it's less than half that choline amount. So again, there's positives and negatives. And when you compare it to the last one, Alpha-GPC, you'll see it's a positive. So overall, I'm going to call it a positive because compared to CDP-choline, it's high. It's more than double the amount of choline. So that's another positive. Another positive, I guess this would be the third positive of it, is cheap. When compared to CDP-choline, which is the second choline supplement we're going to talk about, and Alpha-GPC, which is the third, choline bitartrate is cheap. Now, with all the supply chain issues going on and everything, that may have changed. But from my knowledge, from what I remember, choline bitartrate is the cheapest of the three. That doesn't mean it sucks. That just means it's the cheapest of the three. And that's good for manufacturers. It's good for brand owners, and it's good for consumers. For manufacturers, I'm working with the manufacturers right now to make the pre-workout. It could be a benefit to them because if you have a client being like a brand owner like me, and they say, well, I'm not really sure what ingredients to put in there for like nootropic factor, hint hint hint, what we're going to talk about nootropic factor. Then the brand owner can say, well, okay, we have Alpha-GPC, CDP-choline, and choline bitartrate. Well, Alpha-GPC and CDP-choline may be too much money, but yet then they say, well, we have choline bitartrate. It's a form of choline and it's cheaper, and then it can fit with the consumer, the manufacturer being the brand owner. It can fit with our budget, because I can tell you right now, with the pre-workouts, they're not cheap. Yeah, they're not cheap. But that's also with everything else going on in the world. So another positive is that it's, for the most part, it's cheaper than the other two ingredients, and it's good for brand owners, me, because it lowers the cost of production. So that's good. And then for end consumers, if you're buying just a bottle alone of choline bitartrate, then it'll be cheaper than the other two. At least it should be, just depending on the brand. But if you're buying it mixed in with like a pre-workout or a nootropic blend, it may or may not lower the cost, because there's a lot of factors that go into the cost of those products. But overall, I'm going to mark it as a positive that it's cheaper. So that's pretty much the positives for choline bitartrate. The negative, a big negative, at least to me it is, and that is choline bitartrate has issues. It is inefficient. I won't say ineffective because it can, but I'll say it's inefficient. It has some problems crossing the blood-brain barrier. So essentially, it means it has trouble getting into the brain. The idea is you get an increase in the amount of choline in the brain. Your brain can then use that to make acetylcholine, which is ultimately what we want when we're taking a choline supplement for nootropic purposes. You increase acetylcholine, then it helps. It can help with focus. It can help with attention, and your body uses it. I mean, right now I'm moving my arms. my arms, and I'm talking and everything like that. I'm breathing. Well, my body's using acetylcholine in order to help facilitate that. Without that, as we talked about in the previous episode with the what was it, the bombing in Japan? I forgot when it was, by the Colt. That I forgot, so long I forgot the name of it, but they used sarin gas, which was developed by, I don't know if YouTube likes to use me to use the word or not, by the evil folks in Germany back in World War II. It's actually the sarin. I think it's SARIN. I think, if I'm right. Those are the initials of like the scientists that created it. It basically, it blocks your body's ability to break down acetylcholine. So you get a toxic level of acetylcholine built up in your body. And then the people who died, they basically choked to death because they can't control the muscles to help breathe, because you lose control of it, because acetylcholine is vital to motor movements. All right. So back to it. It is ineffective. I almost said it there. Inefficient at building up in the brain, significant amounts in the brain. Well, a way to get around that is you take more choline bitartrate. You just increase the dose, which we'll talk about dosage here in a minute. So blood-brain barrier, I mentioned that. What is the blood-brain barrier? So I'll go into that here for a little bit. So in our body, we have the circulatory system. It's basically how blood can circulate through the body. All right. You have arteries, which arteries carry blood away from the heart. So my heart beats, and then the blood goes out through the arteries to the rest of the body, to my head, to my arms, to my organs, to my feet, whatever. Veins carry blood back to the heart. All right. So let's use the example. I'm going to use my big old, my camera angle. It isn't wide enough to capture the massiveness of my arm here, my huge left arm. It's huge for various reasons. But I have my big old bicep, especially the forearms get big on that, if you get my drift. I have my big old bicep here. And because we're going to talk about capillaries, this is where the magic happens in the capillaries. So, we have my heart here, it beats through the artery goes, to the arm, and then capillaries actually feed into the muscle. They feed into the organs, they feed into the brain. And the capillaries are the smallest of the three. And the walls of the capillaries are very, very thin. All right. So they allow substances to go through, to, like, I guess, diffuse in and out of them. All right. So we'll just stick with oxygen, since I can probably safely say, out of all the nutrients and substances that are in the blood, that the muscles, the organs, all of our body, our brain needs, the most vital of which is oxygen. Without oxygen, you start to die pretty quick within a few minutes. So, again, the capillaries feed into the bicep in this instance, and the oxygenated blood go through the capillaries, and then the oxygen can go through the walls of the capillaries, and then carbon dioxide can come back into the blood, the waste products. But then oxygen can be used for, aerobic respiration, if you're, whatever, you're doing bicep curls, whatever the case may be, sitting around doing nothing. All right. So I think I'm going to try this, folks. Let me see if I can do this here. We're gonna take a risk here. We're gonna see if this works. Give me a minute here while I come up here. All right, I'm gonna try this, and then I'm gonna share my screen. Let's do. Yeah, I'm just gonna do I'm gonna do a line here. Boom, boom. And let me share my screen to show you my wonderful creation. Waiting for it to come up on my screen. And I apologize in advance for any delay. Um, yeah, here we go. I apologize in advance for any delay. I am using the conference room of the apartment. The Wi-Fi signal seems to be pretty strong. At least that's what YouTube tells me. The connection was great. There's a new Wi-Fi here, so that's awesome. But there may be some lags. I prefer to do it at home, but the son is at home, and yeah, he's can get pretty rowdy. So All right, you can probably should be able to see it on my phone. This is my wonderful depiction of capillary. I mean, Leonardo da Vinci would be jealous. He's like, "Wow, that is amazing, your work you did there, Howard." So, yeah, there's basically, for anybody listening, it's two parallel lines. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try this. It's been forever since I've used paint. Boom. Let's try it again. Boom. All right, let's do three here, three here. So all I've done is I've basically drawn, well, it says ovals, but they're horrible looking ovals on the top and the bottom lines. All right. They're maybe about, well, for me, an inch apart. Right. Of course, this is supposed to be a capillary, and these circles are endothelial cells. All right. We talked about endothelial cells in the episode on citrulline because that goes into the whole idea dilation, expanding the blood vessel walls, capillary walls to help get more blood into the muscle, etc. This is obviously not to scale, but in between the in between these endothelial cells, there's these spaces like these 1 inch gaps. Well, that space allows for more substances to come into the bicep muscle, my huge bicep, and then out of the bicep. It allows for that. However, in the brain, the capillaries in the brain, the density of the endothelial cells is much greater. So what we're going to do is we are filling the gaps of the capillaries with the endothelial cells in the bicep. In the brain, those gaps are much smaller. There's a higher density of endothelial cells in the capillaries of the brain. So this prevents a number of substances from coming into the brain from the blood to the brain and then back into the blood. Those endothelial cells act as the blood brain barrier. There's a lot of substances you don't want getting into the brain. I mean, I can think of one would maybe be like bacteria, viruses, certain compounds, etc. You want to try to prevent those from getting into the brain. I believe the blood brain barrier also exists in the spinal cord as well. All right. So choline bitartrate, because there's a gap, you can see well, if you look closely, there's little tiny gaps there. So there's still gaps there. You know, maybe that's how they get in. Okay. Uh, but the density of those endothelial cells in the capillaries is much denser in the brain. So that again acts as the barrier, but that also means that choline bitartrate has more problems, inefficient at getting into the brain. So you have to take more of it. That's the big negative with choline bitartrate. Let me stop sharing my screen. So that leads us directly into dosage. All right. The dosage of choline bitartrate on the low end, it's about 250 milligrams. That is for what's called quote unquote general health. If you're not really concerned, for the most part, with nootropic benefits of choline, then for choline bitartrate, it's 250 milligrams. When I say general health, it's for the health of the liver. So in the previous episode, at the beginning of the episode, I talked about choline bitartrate being vital for liver health. And I use the example of people being fed through a feeding tube that lacked choline. After a time, they developed non alcoholic steatohepatitis, which is a precursor to cirrhosis of the liver, which is scarring of the liver. And the doctor, and I forget the doctor's name, I don't even remember if I said it or not. He discovered that if he put choline into the solution that they were being fed through, that after a time, the non alcoholic steatohepatitis cleared up. And in that episode, choline on my mind, I just left it on at that. I just said, oh, well, that proves that choline, or at least indicates that choline has some contribution to liver health. Well, later in this episode, we're going to go into, pardon me, later in this episode, we're going to go into exactly the mechanism by which choline can assist with liver health, and it's a big one. So it may not be the only one, but it's one that I read about, and it's vitally important. All right. Yeah, so that's the low end, 250 milligrams, all the way up to 3,000 milligrams or 3 grams. Now, that 3 gram level, that's where you're getting into like your nootropic, where you're getting enough of it to get into the brain. I mean, that would be what? Roughly 1,400, I mean, it's a little bit less than me, 1,400 or so milligrams of choline if you're taking that much over the course of a day. Um, and with supplements, everybody's different. Somebody may be able to take 250 milligrams of choline and then they get a nootropic benefit from it. Other people may have to take, 2 to 3,000 to get the nootropic benefit of it. The person taking 250, their metabolism may be different, their genetic profile may be different, whatever. More than likely, maybe they're getting a lot of choline already in their diet. They're eating a lot of eggs and, etc. Organ meats, which will come up a couple of times. Organ meats high in choline as well. I remember as a kid, my mom always used to make liver and onions, and I love it. Loved it. It takes a little bit getting used to, as my mom would say. She said it's an acquired taste. So yeah, it took a little bit getting acquired too, but now I love liver. It brings back memories on that. So yeah, that's the dosage range for choline bitartrate, 250 milligrams up to 3,000 milligrams a day. And with any supplements, of course, if you've checked with the doctor, run this by the doctor, I always start with a low dosage first to see how I react to it. And then I slowly build myself up, to make sure I to try to limit the potential of negative side effects. There are negative side effects for all three. I'm going to wait till the summary to talk about them because they apply to all three. It doesn't really make sense to go over it 3 times. So I see Rodney has given the piece. So peace, Rodney. As I mentioned, Harmony was on here. For whatever reason, my chat in this Riverside is not coming up, so I need to check the settings to make sure that's all correct. But I have it on my phone so I can see when anybody chimes in here. And please feel free to ask questions on here, folks. This is, if anybody has any questions, this is why I do the live, just to get a chance to talk to y'all while I'm recording these episodes. I will do my best to answer. If I don't know the answer, then I will research and then get back to you and make another video. Give you a chance to answer your question. Maybe it's a question that multiple people have. So, and please feel free again to ask questions on the recorded. Hit me an email, Instagram, comment on the video, etc. So I think that is, yeah, I think that's it for choline bitartrate. That is the first supplement. Acme Supplements, choline bitartrate. Beautiful label. Again, I need to talk to Wile E. Coyote because it's got a berberine supplement facts panel for choline bitartrate. That's violating FDA guidelines. And if they advertise this, it may be violating FTC guidelines. So I'm going to put this over here. I'm going to recycle it later, folks. Recycle, recycle, recycle. All right, on to the next supplement. This is where we start to get into like even more juicy details. All right, folks. So then this is sup talk. This is going to be my segment. We'll call them sup talk, like supplement talks, deep science. Like I need to, in the recording, I need to like deep science, like modulate my voice, deep science. Next one. See, I show up there. I wish they had blinds here. I could shut these because the sun's coming through. And I think to me, at least, it's messing up. Acme Supplements brand CDP-choline. It's also called CT-choline, CITI. I think what I've seen is normally on the supplement facts panel, of a sole CDP-choline supplement, like quote unquote this, or on a nootropic or a pre-workout, you'll see it listed as CT-choline, CITI. I've seen it CHOLINE. I've also seen CITI-COLINE, CD-choline. The actual molecule is CDP-choline. So that stands for cytidine. I've heard cytidine or cytidine. To me, it's easier to say cytidine, so I'm going to stick with cytidine. Cytidine diphosphocholine is what it means. I'm going to set that over there. All right, so positives and negatives. We'll go with that. Oh, actually, I think I may have a picture of the molecule that I can show you. Let me see. I don't think I need these anymore. I'm gonna close these out just so I don't keep a picture of it. I think I got this. Did I get this from Wikipedia? Let me close this. All right, let me share my screen and I'll show you a molecule of it. And then obviously, yep, we're going to go all through, get into the juicy details of it. I said we're only on the second molecule, and I got one more, and I need to go over some corrections that I made. So we still got some good amount of information to go over, folks. But I think those of you who like the deep science, you like to drill down to the details, I think you're going to be very happy with the end product of this. All right, so here's a molecule of CDP-choline. So you have, again, I'm going to try to describe it for maybe people listening. You have choline on the left. See, there's your trimethylammonium over here. And then you have cytidine or cytidine on the right. And then in the middle, we have two phosphate groups. All right. Phosphate being a phosphorus with 4 oxygens bonded to it. At least that's kind of a simple definition that I've understood from it. So let's kind of look at the molecule of CDP-choline. Let me stop sharing. All right. So positives and negatives of CDP-choline. Well, the first is, unlike choline bitartrate, CDP-choline is actually made in the body already. As I'm talking to you now, as you're watching or listening now, or listening or watching later, as you're, Memorial Day, you're outside, enjoying barbecue, whatever, your body is making CDP-choline. So it is made in a process called I've heard of this, the Kennedy cycle or the Kennedy pathway, discovered aptly by Dr. Kennedy. I think it was in the 1950s or something like that. I actually have a picture of it, and I'll show it to you in just a minute here. So yeah, it is made during this process, during the process of the Kennedy cycle. So actually, let me bring it up. So actually, I think it'll explain it. It'll explain it better if I actually bring up the diagram here. Let's see, which one did I want to use? Yeah, this one I wanted to use. That one's later. Let me share my screen. Tuning in, I'm learning this as I go. What I plan on doing is next time I'm using, and this is not a knock on Riverside. I've done interviews using them. It's a wonderful product. I mean, it's very, very high quality. The way it does the recordings and everything, especially if you may not have the best of connections, it'll still make your end result, like if you're doing remote interviews and such. It makes it wonderful. This is the first time I'm dipping my toe into using it for live stream. So it's not necessarily Riverside. It's me. It's what we call in IT a layer 8 issue, meaning that it's user error. I'm trying to learn it. So I think next time I'm going to bring these up in a browser window and then share my browser window, because I think it'll come up more clearer in it. But at least I think I'm going to describe it well enough to get the point across. So this is the Kennedy cycle. All right, you can see the intracellular and then extracellular. This is inside the cell. All right, or inside a cell in the body. So on the right, we have choline as the beginning substance, what this whole episode is about, choline. And at the end, we have PC, which is phosphatidylcholine. On the left, which we're basically 99% of this, we're going to be talking about the right side, choline to phosphatidylcholine. On the left side, we have ethanolamine. It's easier for me to pronounce it ethanolamine. I've also heard it. Sorry, got a phone call there. Let me turn off the, there, turned it off, silenced it. And it looks like it's a scam call, anyways. On the left, we have ethanolamine. Now, I've heard it pronounced ethanolamine because it's like ethanol and then amine, but it's easier for me to pronounce it ethanolamine. And at the end, at the bottom, let me just make sure. Yes, it's. And at the bottom, we have PE, which is phosphatidylethanolamine. The left side, the phosphatidylethanolamine, it will come up later after we've talked about CDP choline when we get into the corrections I need to make from the previous episode on choline on my mind. So this will come up later. So we're just going to leave it at that right now. I'm not going to go any more details on it. So again, we're going to be focusing on the right side. So as you can see, let's see if it, it doesn't list it here. Oh, wait, no, sorry, it does. Right here. After we have choline, P-choline, then CDP-choline, and then we have phosphatidylcholine. So pretty much like the third step, or pardon me, the second step, the end result is CDP-choline. That's how it is made in the body. All right. Well, what's the purpose of this PC? And why is PC being made? Well, phosphatidylcholine is a phospholipid that is a component. Let me minimize this and then share. Oh, let me stop sharing for a second. It is a component of the membrane of our cells. I believe I'm correct in saying that it is the most abundant of the phospholipids in the membrane of our cell. So very important. And as you saw from the diagram there, our body uses choline to make phosphatidylcholine. So our body uses choline to make acetylcholine. Well, it also uses choline to make phosphatidylcholine as well. So that's why it's a vital nutrient that we consume either through food or through supplements. And this goes to show that I am very, very tired this morning because I planned on bringing a bag of Howard's Blend plant-based protein powder to promote it, and I forgot it. It's at home. Oh well. But Howard's Blend plant-based protein powder, it's got choline as well. Probably a little small amount, but I think it does. All right, let me share my screen here. Share entire screen. Actually, you know what? Thinking about it as I'm bringing this up, I need to check. I'm not sure if Howard's Blend plant-based. Well, I'm sure it has some choline in it. Again, because usually your best sources of choline are going to be animal-based products, even though they do exist in plant-based products. I need to check the label again to see if it's on there. Oh, well. All right, here we go. All right, so here is a picture of the cell, and then we have the membrane, this membrane around it. So we have the nucleus here, we have, mitochondria, we have the endoplasmic reticulum, which is always, I always love that word, endoplasmic reticulum. But this membrane surrounding the cell, that is made of fats, lipids, the most abundant of which is phosphatidylcholine. So that's why our body makes phosphatidylcholine, right? So in order to make the membrane of the cells, so extremely important. Without it, we're in big trouble. So I don't think I need that anymore. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Okie dokie. All right. So is there anything else I need to go over on this? All right. So let me bring this back. Actually, I can keep it off for a little bit. So the Kennedy cycle or Kennedy pathway, which, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and share it again. This here, make sure you can all see it. It's not coming up on my screen. Hopefully soon. All right, I think it's back up. This is one way from choline to phosphatidylcholine, the Kennedy pathway. It is one way in which the body can. Doing the reading, I believe there's a total of three. There may be more. I only read about three. The second way is what's called the Lands cycle, Land apostrophe S. We're not going to go into that in this episode. The third way is the PEMT pathway. I believe that's fetal choline methyltransferase, if I remember it correctly. Pardon me, phosphatidylethylamine methyltransferase. What does that look like? Phosphatidylethylamine and then phosphatidylethylamine methyltransferase. Is that a coincidence? No, it's not a coincidence. They are related. All right. So that's the third one. We're going to talk about that pathway after we've talked about CDP. All right. So let me check my notes, make sure, let me check my notes to make sure I am not missing anything vital. Yeah, I think we're good. I think we're good on that. I think we're right exactly where we should be. I haven't missed anything, which is amazing for me because my memory is gone as I get older. I will soon be 46 years old. God help me. All right, so this is one way cycle and then the PEMT pathway. Those are three that I read about. There could be more. Again, if you all know more, let me know, but those are three that I know about. All right, so now we're going to go through the steps of this Kennedy pathway. I believe since the Kennedy pathway is essentially both of these, choline to phosphatidylcholine, ethylamine to phosphatidylethylamine. Pardon me one second. We're going to focus on this right side here. These are both part of the Kennedy pathway. However, I believe the choline to phosphatidylcholine is called the CDP-choline pathway. I believe that's what it's called. So we'll go through this step by step. We start off with choline, obviously. All right. So then there is a molecule of ATP. We all know ATP if you've taken biology, basic biology, adenosine triphosphate. It is broken down into adenosine diphosphate. The phosphoryl group is added to choline. So basically, they're bonded together. And I believe the phosphoryl group, I believe, is phosphorus with 3 oxygen atoms on it. I think there's more difference phosphate groups, but I think that's the big difference between the two. This reaction, chemical tango, whatever you want to call it, is facilitated by an enzyme called choline kinase. All right. So essentially, choline is phosphorylated. I believe in a previous episode of the podcast, I said it was phosphorylation. I added a Z in there. No, it's phosphorylation. So that basically means the phosphoryl group is bonded to the molecule. So choline then, because of this, becomes phosphocholine. So that is the first step. I believe this takes place in the cytoplasm of the cell. And I knew I was going to need that diagram again. I'm not going to bring it back up. Basically, the area between the membrane and the in the nucleus of the cell. That's the cytoplasm there. All right, second step. This takes place, I believe, in the nucleus of the cell. Your phosphocholine, your result from the first step, and then we have a new substance, cytidine triphosphate. Well, cytidine, you said CDP-choline was cytidine diphosphocholline. Yep, they are related. Yep, this is where it comes from. So we have CTP, cytidine triphosphate. Those two have the chemical two-step, whatever, the tango there. They have their chemical reaction facilitated, or the catalyst for the reaction is an enzyme, and this always gives me trouble trying to pronounce it. Phosphocholine cytidylil transferase. Boy, say that 3 times fast. Cytidylil transferase. Cytidylil. See, I can't even do it twice. Phosphocholine cytidylil. Phosphocholine cytidylil. Cytidylil. Yeah, you get the point. It's the enzyme that facilitates the reaction between phosphocholine and CTP, cytidine triphosphate. The end result is CDP-choline. This is how CDP-choline is made in the body during the process by which our cells in our body are trying to create phosphatidylcholine from choline in order to use the phosphatidylcholine to make the membranes of our cells. But we're not done. We still got one more step to go. So we have this CDP-choline here, and I believe this last step takes place in the endoplasmic reticulum. It has a reaction right here. You see it here. This molecule is diacylglycerol, or I think it's also called I don't know, I forgot. There was another name for it, but it's I know this one DAG is diacylglycerol, or I've heard diacylglycerol. It has a reaction. The catalyst, the enzyme that's a catalyst for this reaction is choline phosphotransferase. Much easier to say than phosphocholine cytidylil transferase. Much. They have the reaction. You end up with phosphatidylcholine and this one here, CMP, cytidine monophosphate. Right? So that's essentially the first benefit of CDP choline is that, well, it's made in the body. So when you supplement with it, you're basically supplementing with something your body already makes. All right. So I'm going to stop sharing this. And remember, because this is the Kennedy cycle, this will come up later. This is the one we're talking about. I think this is the CDP choline pathway, this right side of it. Let me stop sharing. Minimize that. All right, I'm back. Let's see. Another benefit of CDP choline is that supplementing with CDP choline could, and that's in big quotations underlined, could result in a decreased amount. Rodney, yeah, I'm not even going to try to say that, sir. I've heard that for super whatever. You get, yeah, it's a it's a long ass word, just like I have trouble pronouncing cytidylil transferase. But CDP choline could, it could result in a decreased amount of trimethylamine production. Trimethylamine, that sounds familiar. Yes, it should, because there's your trimethylamine there we talked about earlier. Literally, it's nitrogen, so that makes your amine, but then we have trimethyl, 3-methyl groups, CH3. It literally would be, I think it's N, if you write it out like the formula for whatever, I think it's N, and then you have parentheses, CH3, close parentheses, subscript 3. So it's literally 3 molecules of methyl groups or 3 methyl groups and then a nitrogen. That's trimethylene. Supplementing with CDP choline could result in a decreased amount of trimethylamine being produced. Trimethylamine being an amine, just like what we talked about with CDP choline. So in the previous episode, we talked about this, the idea of trimethylamine and then also TMAO, which is trimethylamine in oxide. Basically, an oxygen is added to the nitrogen, and I believe that occurs in the liver. And what we referenced for the last episode was that trimethylamine could result in a fishy odor. So I think it was referenced that their urine smells like fish, Their breath smells like fish, which is what I'm told all the time. That's why the women run away and say, "Oh, your breath smells like fish." I'm like, "Oh, sorry, I got too much trimethylamine. I'm sorry." That's what you can use now, guys. You say, "I'm sorry, I got a buildup of trimethylamine. I can't help it. I got fishy breath, fishy breath, or fishy odor breath." But I've heard that the body, like it excretes like a fishy smell. So it's not harmful, at least to my knowledge. It's not harmful, other than your social life is harmed by it. And what happens is it's produced by bacteria in our intestines that metabolize choline, and I believe carnitine as well. It can do it with it as well. But other than the fishy odor, which, yeah, I mean, that could be a big deal to people, especially mentally, socially, whatever. The liver converts it into trimethylamine N oxide, which, good thing is it doesn't smell like fish anymore. Bad thing is it's not good for your body. It can lead to heart disease. I've heard cancer, diabetes, just a number of different um, chronic, illnesses can be caused by too much TMAO, is what it called, trimethylamine N oxide. So the idea is, or at least what I read, it said this is just hypothesized. It has not been proven. So I'm going to go ahead and mark it as a positive, a potential positive, is that CDP choline could reduce the production, or could result in a reduced production of trimethylamine. And there was like maybe two or three reasons given, or possible reasons why that is the case. The one that made the most sense to me is that in the cytidine diphosphocholene, it's still intact. So the cytidine hasn't been separated yet from the choline. It's still intact. So then it didn't say this. I'm only assuming on this that it's tougher than for the bacteria to act on it and to metabolize it to create this TMA. It didn't state that it stops it fully. It just reduces it so TMA can still be produced, which could then ultimately be turned into TMAO. Um, but it could reduce it, so then maybe there's less of a chance of it building up. And I think in that same episode, I think it was, I don't remember the vitamin. It was riboflavin. I don't remember what B vitamin that is, but that it's possible that taking riboflavin could reduce or eliminate that odor. So, all right. But that's going to be a positive, because you don't want a buildup of TMAO, whether it's whether a buildup of it's going to cause you to have some sort of chronic illness. I have confirmed or not. I think ultimately you just don't want a buildup of it. So if you reduce the amount of TMA, well, then you're going to be reducing the amount of TMAO. And the um, the theory, or I guess I'm going to say the theory, for TMA and TMAO is this occurs if you're taking a lot of choline. So I mentioned with choline bitartrate, 3,000 milligram was like the the max dosage that was provided in the documentation. Well, there's something also called the upper limit of choline in general, and I think it was like 3,500 milligrams or something like that. I've also seen you may not have to worry about TMA all the way up to 7,000 milligrams of choline. So now this is not just CDP choline or choline bitartrate. This is choline in total. So this is the food you're eating, supplements, etc. So if if you hear this and you're concerned, you talk to your doctor, maybe whatever. If you're, especially, I would think if you're on something like a carnivore diet, but like meat or eggs or something like that, or maybe a keto diet, then where you're consuming a lot of eggs, because eggs have a lot of choline, then that may be something you want to talk to your doctor about, see if they're concerned. I believe there's a blood test to see how much TMAO you have in your body. Um, Maybe it's just something to talk to your doctor about. So I'm going to list it as a positive, because if it is indeed something to be concerned about, well, then CDP choline may reduce that, and you're still getting your choline. Okay, another positive. Let me see what the now I was going to look at my notes and I remembered, is regarding uridine. IDINE, not urine, uridine. Right? Uridine, to keep it short, it's an essential nutrient. So our body makes it. I'm not going to get because that would involve a whole bunch of more reading and all these additional notes and everything, which I'm open to do maybe for a future episode. But it's in our body can make it, but it's on broccoli. I think it's in tomatoes, and it's also in organ meats again for the win. Organ meats are very, very healthy, assuming for moral reasons or things where you don't eat. Organ meats are very healthy for you. I have a lot of vitamins and nutrients. So you're second hour, we're talking about CDP-choline. You're talking about uridine. What the hell does that have to do with anything? Well, in the body, or cytidine is converted into uridine. If we bring back up, see if I still have it up here. Yes, I still have it up here. So let me share the screen again. Share. No, we're not for artist drawing of a capillary. It is sharing. Here at the bottom, we have CMP, cytidine phosphate. Now, I believe what happens here is that can be converted. This is just taking the example cycle. Cytidine monophosphate to uridine. Uridine is converted into uridine, which is then converted into cytidine triphosphate, which is what's needed for of the Kennedy cycle to make. So our body makes the uridine our body makes, it's converted to uridine triphosphate, then into cytidine. So essentially what we're doing by taking CDP, increasing the amount of cytidine, because eventually the cytidine and the choline are separated, and then that cytidine gets converted, then eventually gets converted into triphosphate. Now, uridine have cognitive benefits to it. It may be a nootropic as well. It may help to improve memory. It may also be cholinergic. Cholinergic increases acetylcholine level. This was also seen in one of the documentations I saw in aged rats to improve, etc. And that I wanted to bring that up with the aged rats because I wanted to mention something real. Obviously, not a researcher, so this. I mean, I'm not doing this in a lab or anything, but yeah, number of supplements, especially when you get into nootropics. Some of them are done on rats, and there are studies that are done on people. There are some studies that are done on rats. One of the thing about in the future is lion's mane. This is kind of off the top. I just figured I'd mention that. One of the benefits of lion's mane is it increases like the brain-derived neurotropic factor. I think I'm pronouncing, but it actually causes like physical changes to the brain. So in order to validate whether that works or not, they decapitate actually look at their brain to see if it changed. Well, I mean, unless you want to go to jail, you can't do that on humans, living humans, and it won't work on a dead person because they're dead. There's nothing's going to change on that except for just their body slowly decaying. So there are, yeah, they're back and forth on it. On this has only been studied on rats or mice, and then how's that going to translate into humans? I'm not going to say right or wrong. I mean, obviously they have to change the dosage. Um, between humans and mice, because mice have completely different metabolism, much faster metabolisms than people, and they're obviously their weight's different and everything. I just wanted to throw that out there that yeah, I mean, yeah, preferably you want to do it on humans, but there are some rat and mice studies, and I mean that could translate over. That's just my 2 cents on it. Went way off topic there, but I just wanted to throw that out there that some of the studies that I read on this, they were done on rice. They were done on mice and rats, not on people. Or at least the ones that I read, they weren't done on people. So whether that means the benefits are going to translate into people, don't know. You have to experiment, but before experimenting, talk with the medical professional. I just wanted to bring that up. So yes, pyridine could convey some nootropic benefits, and by taking CDP choline, we're increasing the amount of body. Thus, that gets converted into uridine. Thus, you could see the benefit of that. Well, it's an indirect way of increasing uridine, if I said that right. So that's another benefit, and I think that is all for. Let me minimize this and stop sharing. So negatives. We'll go into negatives here with CDP choline. One negative is, I mentioned it during choline bitartrate, is the choline by weight, the amount of choline by weight is low. It's 18%. So if we have our brand new label collaboration between Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner, if it's 1,000 milligram capsule, then about 180 milligrams of that is choline. So less than half of what trade is. Again, as I explained here, there's positives and negatives, which that doesn't make it just means that in terms of the amount of choline bitartrate has more than double than what CDP choline has. So keep that in mind. Another, well, this could be a positive or a negative depending on how you look at it. All right. CD a long half-life. Half-life meaning the amount of time that it takes for your body to metabolize like half of it. We talked about half-life with caffeine. I think usually like for the most part, caffeine's half-life was like 5 hours or something like that. But there are people with genetic, I won't say abnormalities, but genetic variants, I'll say that it could take them, half a day to go through a half-life of caffeine. So if you take 100 milligrams, how long does it take to metabolize 50 milligrams of that? So for CDP choline, it's 2.5 to 3 days for the half-life. So if I were to take this 1,000 milligram capsule this morning, let's say I took it this morning, I mean, it could be Wednesday evening, before it gets in my body. My body's able to metabolize half of it, even up to 3 days. So it could possibly be Thursday morning before it's a half-life is reached. So that could be negative because if you're taking it every day, and again, this is just my interpretation of it. This is not in the research. This is just reading it. I'm like, oh, I'm thinking through my head, like potentials of this. If you're taking well, then that's building up. And then you may get to the point where even though we're talking about TMA, even though CDP choline may result in a reduced amount of TMA, well, if you're taking it every day and it's building up in your body and the half-life is so long, even though it's reduced production, it still may be a lot because you have so much in your system if you're taking it every day, which is one reason why people recommend, I recommend it too, cycle off of it for a time, let your body kind of recover. When you cycle off it, that's between you and it's kind of a personal choice. Me, I have my things, but my schedule, etc. Kind of the negative that I see from it is that you could have this buildup of choline because it takes so long for it to break down. Now, you could also say, well, it's only 18% choline, so it's going to be a while before you build up a high amount of it, right? And so that could be a benefit. Is that, well, it's actually low in choline, less than half, so you have to take even more of it every day in order to potentially maybe get toxic levels of it. Now, it could also be a positive because if it's a life, you may not have to take it every day. You could skip a day, and you might. So your supplements go longer. The bottle that you bought, it lasts long because you don't have to take it. So I'm going to put that as maybe a positive or a negative. All right. So kind of back and forth on that. With that, folks, we covered CDP choline. All right. Right there, look at this bottle. Great label. Again, took 2 to 3 graphic designers to make that. set it over here to be recycled. Now, more juicy stuff, more juicy science stuff. I told you I'm an hour and 20 minutes. I think it took me about 10 minutes or something like that to start because I was just trying to do some prerequisite stuff and then work out all the kinks. I told you this is a long episode, but I think we're well over halfway done, I think now. Depends on how much I ramble on it. All right. Before we get to alpha GPC, alpha GPC, use this time, one, to go a little bit over that PEMT pathway, the phosphatidyl ethylamine transferase pathway. I think we're going to take a little bit of time to go over that, just not a amount of time, because that was part of the Kennedy. This opportunity to correct a couple of mistakes. I'm sure I probably made mistakes in this episode, but correct a couple made in the previous episode, choline on my mind. All right. It was in late cycle. So we'll go brief history. So in that, talked about methylation. So methylation is the process by, remember the methyl group, CH3, a methyl group from one is then provided to another substance. It's called methylation. And the substance that receives been methylated. That's what it's called. You've been methylated. You've been terminated. You've been methylated. All right. So we discussed methylation in the context of homocysteine. So homocysteine, I guess you could say a metabolite of methionine. Methionine is an essential amino acid. We need to consume it. It is in, you eat your beef, cheese, whatever. It's also in this segue to throw out the Howard. Just imagine that I have a bag of Howard's blend right here, and I'm showing you the label. It has methionine in it as well. On the back of the label, this may actually be a really good Instagram story. On the back of the label, it actually gives you a chart showing how much of the essential amino acids are in the product per serving. So that's a good thing. Cysteine is a byproduct of the metabolism of methionine, which is, again, an essential amino acid. So it's natural. It happens. It just happens in our body all the time. It's happening in our body. So homocysteine can get dangerous or toxic if you have too much of it in your body. It could lead to atherosclerosis, heart disease, etc. I believe the term for that, I could be wrong, I'm going on a limb here, is homocystinemia. I believe is what it's called, when you have too much homocysteine. Well, because it's natural, this is what happens all the time in the body, is our body utilizes methionine, or cells utilize methionine. Our body has ways to take care of homocysteine. One of those, well, yeah, there's actually three ways that I know of. One of the ways we discussed in detail in the last episode was through the folate cycle, where homocysteine is methylated. It receives a methyl group and then it converts back into methionine. And actually, I'm just going to explain it here because in order to go further, well, I'm going to explain it with the diagram here. I'm going to start from the beginning because explaining here would kind of defeat the whole purpose. So make sure, let me close all this out because I'm going to leave that open for now. Let me open up another diagram. I think this is the one I want right here. Yeah, here we go. This is what we want because this has all the enzymes and stuff on it. Because these enzymes get very hard to remember. With my 45, soon to be 46-year-old brain, I think I need some choline. Maybe I should. Maybe I need to take some Howard's Blend pre-workout. I wonder if that will have choline in it. Maybe it will. All right, so let me bring this up. Make sure it is sharing. I'm just making sure that it comes up that the program is actually sharing. Right. Yeah, there we go. Okay. All right. So this is a overall view of everything we're going to be talking about. There's literally like three different cycles or processes going on here. Okay. So, and this may be, I don't know if this will be difficult to see or not. Hopefully, my explanation. I'm hoping my explanations were sufficient enough if you're having issues seeing the diagram. We're going to start with this box kind of in the upper right, this methylation pathway, and then you have the methionine cycle. Make about methionine. So it starts protein. So again, we're eating your cheese, your protein, your meat, chicken, your Howard's Blend plant-based 20 grams of protein per serving. Hit me up at howardsblend.com on Instagram to get information on purchasing some. It has so there's your source of methionine, your essential amino acids. It basically means is we need to consume foods with methionine in it in order for our body to get it. Our body can't make that amino acid. All right. So methionine, with the assistance of a molecule of ATP, right, it is to SAM, S-adenosyl methionine, and I believe the enzyme, yeah, right here, MAT, methionine adenosyl transferase. All right. SAM, S-adenosyl methionine, again, made via the catalyst of this being the enzyme methionine adenosyl transferase and a molecule of ATP, which gets converted into a molecule of ATP being converted into a molecule of ADP. This S-adenosyl transferase, S-adenosyl methionine is what is known as the universal methyl donor. So I'll give you just a few examples here. It methylates proteins. It methylates DNA. It also methylates PEMT. What is PEMT? That sounds familiar. Phosphatidylethylamine. Well, it pronounce all this. Phosphatidylethylamine in phrase. What we talked about when we have covering CDP-choline. So why would DNA need to be methylated? I thought that was an interesting question. Kind of looked a little bit into it. Well, the methylation of DNA essentially regulates gene expression. So gene expression. See if I'm trying to work it out in my head here. So DNA, to me, this is how I understood it. So DNA essentially is like a program. It's like a code. So if you have somebody that does coding for a living and they're typing out the code, they're basically kind of like typing out the DNA. And then when the code is put into a program and that code is executed on, you get a result. The result, if you're programming like a video game, it could be like, if then, if the user goes into this door, then they get burned or destroyed by the werewolf vampire or something like that. I don't, whatever the case may be. Well, with a gene expression, it basically means the DNA, the code is being used by the cell, and then that code is used to produce an output, just like with the guy going through the door and gets eaten by or burned by the vampire werewolf, whatever. If the DNA is then acted upon, that code is then read and then executed upon, it makes proteins. And then the proteins are for many, many different things. We're going to talk about a protein here, or a protein used to make an enzyme here shortly. In regards to um, methylation, I believe the methylation of the DNA actually uses to stop the gene expression. That's why I said regulate gene expression. It stops, like, okay, we no longer need to read this code and execute it in order to make these proteins. We don't need any more. DNA is methylated and then it stops. So in short, methylation, so providing a methyl group, a molecule of CH3 to DNA, regulates expression of the gene. Okay? Genes being a combination of nucleotides on chromosomes in our cell, which there's, what is it, 23 pair in the nucleus of all our cells. All right. And then nucleotides being, what is it, A, T, C, G. I don't remember what those are off the top of my head, but it's just a combination of them. A, A, T, T, C, G, C, A. It's just a combination of those, right, which we'll bring up probably later in this episode again with regards to polymorphisms, because I think I mentioned that in Choline on My Mind. So this SAM, I mean, I just explained it there. It's vitally important. We need it. So that's why it's important to make sure that you get a diet rich in the essential amino acids, because one of the uses of one of the essential amino acids, methionine, is to make, which methylates DNA. So very, very, very important. Now, as I mentioned, SAM also methylates PEMT, phosphatidylethylamine N methyltransferase, to be used in the phosphatidylethylamine N methyltransferase pathway. In fact, I think it's 3 molecules of S-adenosylmethionine are needed to methylate PEMT. So what's the purpose? I just knocked out my earbud. What's the purpose of PEMT? Well, the purpose is it's the third way. Again, we have the Kennedy pathway, the CDP-choline pathway, that part of the Kennedy pathway. We have the LAN cycle, which we're not going to cover in this episode, and the PEMT pathway. It's another way for the body to make choline. Well, with PEMT, this occurs in the liver. With PEMT, the liver converts phosphatidylethylamine with phosphatidylethylamine N methyltransferase, the enzyme that's now been methylated via 3 molecules of SAM, S-adenosylmethionine. Through that pathway, the liver actually converts phosphatidylethylamine to phosphatidylcholine. So why would that be the case? I mean, just thinking off the top of my head, why would the liver need to convert it? I mean, if we have the Kennedy cycle or the Kennedy pathway, we have the LAN cycle, why would the liver need to convert it as well? Well, one, think of the example I gave earlier at the beginning of the episode with the people, which we talked about also in Choline on My Mind, with the people that were fed through a feeding tube and they were not given choline. Well, the liver needs a way to make it if there's no choline or very little choline present. So that's one way. They're genetic. When I said we're going to talk about polymorphisms, there could be a genetic issue where this part of the kidney is not really efficient. It doesn't make enough phosphatidylcholine because the liver needs, about that in a second. Maybe the cycle and the Kennedy pathway enough phosphatidylcholine that the liver needs. Maybe that's due to, again, maybe it's a temporary illness. Maybe it's an illness that's causing choline metabolism to mess up. Maybe it's genetic factors. All right. Basically, in short, because we're not going to really, this is pretty much PEMT. The PEMT pathway is essentially the PEMT, that enzyme, it's methylated by the 3 molecules of SAM, S-adenosylmethionine, and converts phosphatidylethylamine to phosphatidylcholine. Now, we're going to get into, we're going to explain how choline, via phosphatidylcholine, is so vital to the health of the liver, which we, so the reason, and stop sharing. Yeah, we'll go back to that in a second. Diagram. The reason why choline is so important in the form of phosphatidylcholine to the liver is because the liver uses phosphatidylcholine to make something called VLD, lipoproteins. I'm sure any of you have been to the doctor, you've gotten blood test, you've seen that, oh, my cholesterol is this, my HDL cholesterol is this, and my LDL is this. They break it down. HDL being quote unquote good cholesterol, LDL being quote unquote bad cholesterol. Well, this is VLDL. It's a very low density lipoprotein. And I thought about what analogy can I use for this? And it's a horrible Howard's Blend plant-based protein powder, but I think it works. So the protein powder is in my apartment, which is about a 5-minute walk away from here. Think of the apartment as as the liver. I can say my liver. That's where I store the product. Protein powder is fat and cholesterol that is in the liver. All right. When somebody orders the product, I take a box, I put the protein powder box, tape it up, and then drop it off, UPS or USPS, whatever. Well, the box is a VLDL. Think of it that way. So essentially, our liver is using phosphatidylcholine to make these VLDLs, which then it can store cholesterol in the VLDLs and then send it. The term I believe is extra outside of the liver. Anytime you see hepatic, it means liver. It sends it outside the liver. Well, let's see, if you are not eating enough choline in your diet, you're not supplementing with enough choline, you're not supplementing with it. If you have a chronic illness or a temporary illness that's causing your metabolism, you're not metabolizing choline properly, take variants for whatever, then if your liver is not getting enough choline, it cannot remove the fat and the cholesterol from the liver from itself. And you can end up with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. You can end up with non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, and then eventually cirrhosis, which is scarring of the liver, which at that point, I believe that's beyond the liver's ability to regenerate. It can't regenerate itself. So you have to have like either a partial liver transplant or whatever part of the liver is damaged, and then then that the partial transplant or whatever the case may be. But I've seen pictures of it, and I should have saved a picture of it. But fatty liver, it actually like a piece of steak or whatever, piece of steak, and it's like has a lot of marbling fat in it. It's literally a liver that has all this marbling in it. When they say fatty liver disease, they mean the liver is building up. I mean, pardon me, the fat is building up in the liver, and you literally get a fatty liver. It's marbled and everything. So that is why it's so important, or at least one way. There may be more that I don't know of. That is one way in which choline is to the liver's health. It is so vital that the liver is actually able to take phosphatidylethylamine, which is a completely different substance, and convert it into phosphatidylcholine. Albeit, though there are genetic variants where people are not efficient at making phosphatidylcholine via the PEMT pathway. So, there's genetic variants all around. So, let me go back to the we're going to continue on it. So that is the explanation of how choline is vital to the liver. So let's see. Let me close this out because I keep bringing that up. Right here. Here we go. Bam. Back to the wonderful diagram. All right. So we have S-adenosylmethionine. All right. So it donates its methyl group to DNA. 3 S-adenosylmethionine molecules donate to PEMT to do the PEMT pathway, whatever. The methyl groups are now gone. It's the methylation has occurred. It then is SAH. So now we're kind of rounding the circle here, around almost getting to the what is it, 180. SAH is S-adenosyl homocysteine, right? The precursor to homocysteine. And then eventually it gets converted into homocysteine, which is what I mentioned before. You get a buildup of that homocysteine, and they could lead to like heart disease, atherosclerosis, etc. So not good. So this is where we get into, as far as my knowledge is, there are 3 ways that the body can take care of homocysteine to try to prevent this buildup. One way is as we go down on this diagram from homocysteine, which is kind of like at the center of the bottom center of the diagram. As we go down from it is I believe this is pronounced, this cycle here going down, the transsulfuration pathway. It's literally trans and then sulfur and then ation, transsulfuration. So this we need vitamin B6 for. Hmm. We need vitamin B6 for this. And if you can see the diagram, homocysteine can eventually be converted into cysteine, which I believe, if memory serves me right, is a non essential. I mean, it would make sense. The body's making it from homocysteine. It's a non essential amino acid. Our body can make it. Well, we now know at least one way it can do it, from methionine to homocysteine to cysteine. And further down, it's not shown on this because it would cut off all the legend here at the top that I needed to read because I can't remember these long names of these, or it's difficult for me to remember these long names of these enzymes. Cysteine can eventually be converted into glutathione, which I think is like cysteine, glycine. It's a mixture of different substances. Glutathione being an extremely important antioxidants, which we talked about antioxidants in previous episodes on that. So very, very, very important. That's one way is homocysteine can be used to eventually be turned into glutathione. Another way, if we go directly up from homocysteine, we see BHMT and then or betaine, BHMT, and then dimethylglycine. Betaine, aka trimethylglycine, it's all we're going to cover. We're going to keep it real short with this because actually betaine is going to be another episode of the podcast. Betaine, aka trimethylglycine, well, it's in the name trimethyl. It's got three methyl groups. Betaine can actually be used methylate, and I believe this is the betaine homocysteine methyltransferase, BHMT. I have my notes at home, but it's been a while since I reviewed it. BHMT, it can actually convert homocysteine back into methionine. That's one way homocysteine can be methylated. And then trimethylglycine turns into dimethylglycine because the methyl groups is used to methylate homocysteine. Now, the one we're going to focus on here, we're going to go into this in more detail because this is where I made the mistake, is the remethylation pathway, or also says the folate cycle. So folate is vitamin B9. Right, you'll see it on your supplements, more than likely listed as folic acid. So essentially, again, from your diet, supplements, etc., you get folic acid. You're getting your folate. Now, this enzyme here, this is DHFR. I think that's dihydrofolate reductase. Yeah, right here, dihydrofolate reductase. It converts folate into a form of folate that can be used in this cycle, and that is tetrahydrofolate right here, tetrahydrofolate. Now underneath it. Now we have SHMT, which again, my memory is, yeah, this is serine hydroxymethyltransferase. Aren't you glad I went to public school? At least I can get it partially right. Serine hydroxymethyltransferase. It converts tetrahydrofolate into this MTHF. Now, in the previous episode, choline, or the previous choline episode, choline on my mind, I I said that that was methyl tetrahydrofolate. That is incorrect. It is methylene tetra. All right. So we have the methylene tetrahydrofolate. Then this enzyme, and this is the enzyme we spent a lot of time on, MTHFR. In the episode, I said, oh, it's methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase. Incorrect. It is methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase. It should be right up here. Yeah, methylene tetrahydrofolate and then methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase. The job of that enzyme is to convert methylene tetrahydrofolate into methyl tetrahydrofolate. You can see, probably should be right around, does it even list it here? No, I don't think it lists it. But this is methyl tetrahydrofolate. This is the methylated form of folate. So now I'm going to rest this, and then I'll explain where I additionally made an error. So this methyl tetrahydrofolate then methylates vitamin B12. Vitamin B12 is called cobalamin. When it is methylated, it's methylcobalamin, which you can actually buy that if you go to the vitamin shop, GNC, whatever store you buy your supplements from. You can actually buy um, methylcobalamin. I believe you can also buy methyl tetrahydrofolate. So this methylated vitamin B12, along with the enzyme methionine synthase, vitamin B12 then methylates homocysteine, converting it back into methionine. So this folic acid is actually a combination of vitamin B9 and B12. What I said in the previous episode, we already talked, or the previous choline episode, we already talked about methyl and methylene tetrahydrofolate. I said that methyl tetrahydrofolate then methylates homocysteine directly. I mean, if you look at it in a macro view, like if you're skipping a lot of steps, if you're trying to summarize it, yes, you can see indirectly it methylates homocysteine. But if you want to be exact about it, and that's my goal, is to try to be as correct as possible, it is not. In that methyl tetrahydrofolate methylates vitamin B12, or methylcobalamin, then methylates homocysteine to convert it back into methionine. Now, as we mentioned, I believe we mentioned it in Choline on My Mind, there are genetic variants with the genes that code for the proteins. Remember, the DNA is basically like a code, and then it gives directions on the to produce the end product, which is proteins. There are genetic variants, MTHFR, that code for the protein to make this enzyme. There are genetic variants to where some people are not as efficient at converting this methylene tetrahydrofolate to methyl tetrahydrofolate. Thus, this whole this folate cycle is not as efficient to change homocysteine back into methionine. This is why you can take this, increase, if you have these genetic variants, you can increase your amount of betaine that you're taking, and then that can slack from any inefficiencies from the genetic variant. You can increase the amount of folate you're taking. As I said, I believe you can even take methyl tetrahydrofolate. So you can actually skip this step here. You can take methylcobalamin, even though it's not really, yeah, it's involved, but it's not directly involved with any genetic variants. There are two, because I mentioned it, there are two, I believe there's actually a good number of genes that are involved with to make the proteins involved in this enzyme, but the most common referred to, and the variants are the C677T and the A1298C. Those are two variants. So essentially, when you have a gene, and we'll talk about this for a little bit, when you have, like I said, the genes are like a combination of nucleotides, A, C, T, G, any combination of those that are in the chromosomes. Well, you get one half of the genes from your mother, you get one half of the genes from your father, and I don't think I need this diagram anymore. So, for example, I think I mentioned in an episode, I had my 23andMe genetic testing done, and 23andMe doesn't put, and this is not a knock on 23andMe, but they don't put it front and center. Like when you log into your dashboard, they'll tell you like, oh, I have a genetic predisposition to think that cilantro smells bad or something, or tastes bad, which it doesn't. It tastes great to me, but whatever. They give you kind of like a rundown, a summary of what you're genetically more prone to, and they don't list anything about MTHFR variations. And I think I read it on our blog is because the information is so kind of quote unquote limited, I guess, that they didn't want to scare anybody. Because with the genetic variant, if you're more inefficient at methylating homocysteine through the folate pathway, then or the folate cycle, that if you can get a buildup of homocysteine, it may lead to heart issues and stuff. So they didn't want to scare anybody. There is a way to find it. You can Google it, how to find your MTHFR variants via 23andMe. You have to go into the raw data. And I found a website that actually kind of went through and says, okay, this is what you look for. This is what you look for. So apparently, if I'm reading the information correct, and again, I'm not a genetic expert on this, but for the C677T, which I believe is the more prominent of the two, variants that are known of. There could be more variants. I have no genetic variants. So, for example, if a quote unquote normal, the nucleotides are supposed to be like CC from it. You get a C from your dad, a C from your mom. Then I have CC. All right. For the A1298C, I am heterozygous for that. In this case, heterozygous, if normal for that gene is supposed to be AA, I have AC. So either my mom or my dad gave me basically the wrong nucleotide for that gene, essentially. Yeah. So I may have a somewhat reduced efficiency at this folate cycle of homocysteine. But there's also people who are homozygous. Homozygous meaning that if it's supposed to be AA, they may have TT or CT or something like that. They're both the nucleotide. They're not correct. So they're even, or I guess you really don't want to say not correct, but they're not what they should be. I guess whatever. So they even have even more reduced efficiency at methylating homocysteine. So I'll just leave it at that. I thought that was interesting to bring. And you could take betaine. Betaine can act as a methyl donor to homocysteine. You could take, I believe, you can take this. You can take more folate because it's not saying it. It's not. It wasn't implying or saying that no methylation occurs. It's a reduced methylation. So if you were to take more folate, then even if it's reduced, then the idea is you would maybe still get enough of a conversion to keep your homocysteine levels in check. So that's interesting. And I believe, let me look at this. Let me make sure. I believe that was all I wanted to cover with that. So that covers how choline directly affects the liver in terms of liver health, explaining it. It also explains the two mistakes that I made in the previous episode, in different ways of metabolizing homocysteine. So I think we're done with this. I'm going to keep it open, but I'm going to minimize it. Keep it open and minimize it. All right. On to the last supplement. We're almost at 2 hours. Good stuff. This is good stuff. I love this stuff. This is why, I mean, there's a ton of information here, folks. This is why it took me. One of the reasons is I have a vlog on my channel, What the Blank Happened to My Podcast. And I explain why it's been so long. I mean, it's a lot of shit to go over, folks. A lot of shit to go over. The last supplement of the day we're going to cover is Alpha-GPC. Again, last but definitely not least, Acme Supplements. And see, I even clipped my fingernails for you all here, so I'm really going all out. You can see the supplement. They took so much care and effort that they even misspelled stuff and made mistakes. I really need to talk to their graphic designer. Alpha-GPC, Acme Supplements. That'll go into the recycle bin later. Alpha-GPC, alpha glycerol phosphorylcholine, goes by multiple names, multiple aliases. Alpha-GPC, alpha glycerol phosphorylcholine, L-alpha GPC, L-alpha glycerol phosphorylcholine, glycerocholine, and choline, I believe it's pronounced alphocerate. So many different names. Let me bring up of the Alpha-GPC molecule. Go to here and share. We're waiting. It's trying. It's trying. All right, bros. All right, cool. All right, Alpha-GPC. And hopefully the stream is working. It may be my phone, but the stream keeps cutting out. So let me know, please, because if that's the case, then maybe I would do shorter episodes, like summary episodes, live on YouTube instead, if it keeps timing out after a while. So Alpha-GPC. All right. So you can see here on the screen on the left, that is our choline molecule. We have the trimethyl ammonium here. Then we have a phosphate group, and then we have glycerol. So it's literally alpha GPC, glycerol right here, phosphoryl right here, choline right there. All right. Alpha GPC. Alpha GPC, let me stop sharing. Alpha GPC is actually found in foods. So, as far as I know, CDP choline is not found in foods, or unless they fortify foods with it. I think the same for choline bitartrate, since it's a man made product, it's not found in nature. But alpha GPC is in some foods. It's in eggs. It's in, I have a list here. One second. Yeah, just because I keep forgetting this stuff. Oh, yeah. So it's eggs, yogurt, oat bran, fruits, but the highest amount is in organ tissues. Organ tissues with the hat trick, I think, there. I think we've mentioned organ tissues 3 times here. So eat your liver. Eat your liver. All right. Liver and onions is always good combination. So it's found in food. So that's a benefit. You can actually get some from nature. Another benefit of alpha GPC is that just like with CDP choline, it's naturally produced in the body. Our body makes it. So we're just supplementing with something our body already makes. Now, how is it made? I have a diagram for that. I'll go. But essentially, it's made in the process. I believe this is called and the diagram may have it, the GPC breakdown pathway. It is made essentially in the process of the body converting phosphatidylcholine, which we talked about. We all should know what that is already. Go listen to the recording if you don't know. It converts phosphatidylcholine back into choline. So remember, the Kennedy cycle goes choline to phosphatidylcholine, or one way, choline to phosphatidylcholine. Well, then this GPC breakdown pathway, in which alpha GPC, or actually glycerophosphocholline, is made, is when phosphatidylcholine is converted back into choline when the body needs choline. An example, why would the body need choline then, pure choline? Well, is the examples I've given, the reasons, possible reasons, you're not eating enough choline, so through supplements your diet, you're sick, you have a chronic illness, you have a genetic variance, whatever, your body's not really efficient at handling choline, metabolizing choline, whatever. We'll use the brain, for example. The brain uses choline to make acetylcholine, which I talked about the importance of acetylcholine in this episode. Well, if the brain needs to make choline, there's not enough choline, well, then it's got to break down cells in order to get that phosphatidyl back into choline to use it. So it's made during that process. So that's a positive, is that our body already makes it. So let me bring this up. There it is. That's what I was looking for. This is actually a pretty good diagram. Not as good as the other one, but I think it explains it pretty well because I like it. So let me share screen again. It is now 11 a.m. my time. 4 hours. Okay, I want to say it right now for anybody that may be watching. There's some watching. At 3 p.m. my away, we're going to be doing an official 5D podcast live. So be sure. So here is the diagram. Up here in the upper left, this is the Kennedy about that. Choline to phosphatidylcholine. This is these top, those are fatty acid chains. Are choline, they have phosphorus, or pardon me, the phosphate. All right, these are the fatty acids here. So what happens is that this is the body breaks down phosphatidylcholine, and in this process, choline, aka alpha GPC, is made. So we have alpha GPC, and then through phospholipase A2, a water molecule, because is what goes through a process of, that means water molecule basically kind of splits it. It cuts off part of it. In this is this reaction, and you can see at the bottom where yeah, you get and I should have practiced this more. Lysophosphatidylcholine. Essentially, this top fatty acids is removed. So it removes the same process occurs using water molecule to break up the substance, in this case breaking up lysophosphatidylcholine. That's what she said. Existence of an enzyme lysophosphatidylcholine lipase. You then get, what's this? Glycerylphosphoryl, aka alpha GP. Now the two fatty acids have been removed. Now there's also a process by which, if we looked at it, I didn't read into it, but there's also this process where phosphatidylcholine can be directly converted into glycerylphosphocholene through this phospholipase B. I didn't read on it that much, so I'm just gonna mention it. But yeah, this is in essence how alpha GPC glycerylphosphocholene is made in the body. There's one more step where we have this choline phosphodiesterase, GPC choline phosphodiesterase. It's the catalyst, the enzyme, the catalyst in this reaction to where we get choline. And that's it. That's basically, I believe, like I said, I believe this part here from phosphatidylcholine counterclockwise to choline, see breakdown pathway. I may be wrong on that. I believe that's the name of the pathway. All right, so let me stop sharing. We've gone over that it's in foods, so it naturally occurs in foods. We talk about that it naturally occurs in the body as well. Another benefit of alpha GPC is choline content. So just almost exactly like choline bitartrate, alpha GPC, the standard form of it is about 40% choline. Choline bitartrate is 41%. So if this was 1,000 milligram capsules, then the standard alpha GPC is about 400 milligrams of choline. Now there are forms. I believe the trademark version of alpha GPC, which is called Alpha Size, which I believe is made by an Italian company called Kimi Nutra, I think is what it's called. That has 50% choline. There are, I guess you could say, quote unquote, generic versions of alpha GPC that also contain 50% choline. So in that case, it would be 500 milligrams of choline. So that's even more of a benefit. You're talking 3 times more than CDP-choline alpha GPC. So that is another benefit. Let me see if there's, oh yes, I remember this now. So the last benefit, so we had 1, 2, this is like what, fourth benefit, fourth pro, is it is possible that alpha GPC can increase growth hormone levels. So I think it was like 2 or 3 different ways that I read that the reasoning behind or the possible explanation of how this happens. The one that made the most sense to me is the following. So the idea is that there's an increase in GHRH, which is growth hormone releasing hormone. So the way it was explained is that because you take the alpha GPC, it can cross the blood-brain barrier easily. The amount of choline increases in the brain. The amount of acetylcholine, thus, that is produced in the brain, then goes up, and that's called, it has a cholinergic effect, increases acetylcholine. Also, you could say the cholinergic tone is increased. That also means the amount of acetylcholine is increased. That increase in acetylcholine then signals the hypothalamus, which is at like the bottom of your brain. It's a little bit above the pituitary gland, to make GHRH, growth hormone releasing hormone. The growth hormone releasing hormone then signals the pituitary gland to produce more growth hormone. And then growth hormone, people use that like in anti-aging clinics. It can help with like muscle, gaining muscle, losing fat. There's a number of reasons that people take it. So that could be a benefit, is that you get an increase in growth hormone. I believe I didn't read into this too much. So I don't know if it's related to growth hormone increase or if it's another mechanism, but alpha GPC could increase like power output. Like if you're doing something like fast, like a sprint or, lifting weights or something like that, where it can increase power output. So that could be another benefit, but that's all I'm going to go into. I didn't read much into the mechanisms behind that. So a negative of alpha GPC, the really only negative just for alpha GPC is the cost. I will say that I'm going through trying to get a formula for this pre-workout. That alpha GPC is expensive, and I'm sure with the current issues going on in the world that it's even more expensive. So for the most part of the three, and this could vary by manufacturer and the time and everything like that, what's going on in the world, other factors, that alpha GPC is the most expensive of the three. So that's really the only negative just for alpha GPC that I can think of. I believe in terms of something else I wanted to mention of supplements. Let me go back to this. I thought I had it in here, but I may not have it in my. Oh yeah, that's it. That's it. So like alpha GPC that you take in a supplement, either from Acme supplements, which I don't know. I don't. It looks kind of shady to me, that bottle, or through a nootropic blend, through a pre-workout, whatever. For the most part, it's made via soy. So they use soy lecithin. I've heard of lecithin. I've also heard of lecithin. I've heard both. Which soy lecithin, I just call it that because it's easier for me to pronounce, is essentially soybean oil and phosphatidylcholine. So they make it through a chemical reaction. I didn't really go into details on it. I just kind of briefly read like a summary of it. Chemical reactions, you're using enzymes and stuff to make alpha GPC that you use in your supplements. I think eggs can also be used as well because it's found in eggs, but I think for the most part, soybean is used, or soy lecithin, or soy lecithin. And I think, folks, with that, alpha GPC, we are done. We have covered all there is to know, or at least all that I read on alpha GPC. Recycling pile, swig of water, then we'll get sucker up. Then like some lemonade when you're. All right, summary. Summarize it. First, we're going to start off side effects. So there are general could be experienced by people for, and this could be if you consume a lot of choline in your diet, just through the food supplementation, and some of those generic side effects, or yeah, I guess they said, although they may be, it's just you're more that you want likely to experience some of the following. And this is not an exhaustive list. This is just ones I just read. Headaches. If you take a choline, you could get headaches. If you is hypotension, so that's low blood pressure. So we always hear about high blood pressure, which is dangerous as well. Low blood pressure can also be dangerous too. So it's low blood pressure. Stomach upsets, nausea. You know, other than the hypotension, I mean, headaches and stomach issues. I mean, you see that with almost any supplement, possible side effect, or even medication that you take. And whether or not you're going to experience any of the following, or all of the ones I just listed, that is, it varies person to person. I said with choline bitartrate, some people may get a cholinergic or a nootropic effect by taking 250 milligrams of choline bitartrate. Other people may have to take 3,000 milligrams before they see any cognitive difference. So everybody's different. And with that said, let me finish this. And I think I forgot to mention the dosage for alpha-GPC choline. So I'll go into that real quick. So what happens when you try to remember everything when you're almost 46 years old? 46 is the new 90 for me. So yeah, you depending on who you are, it could be your metabolism, your genetics, whatever. There could be a number of different factors, everybody is different when how they could react and with the supplements, and they require different dosages. That's why there's like a range of it, because everybody's different. There's no way to tell unless they find some genetic, you know, a genetic marker for it. But that's why I go back to, if you have been cleared by your doctor, if your doctor says it's okay to take these supplements, then I always start on the low end. It's like a pre-workout. When a pre-workout says, hey, a serving is a scoop, it'll usually say on the bottle, start with a half a scoop and then see how and then assess your tolerance to it and then slowly build up. It's the same thing with this. If you're taking choline bitartrate, which the dosage range is 250 milligrams to 3 grams, maybe start with 250 milligrams. If you don't notice anything, go to 500, and then maybe go to 1,000. And then just keep going up from there. And as soon as you notice like a bad side effect from it, well, then maybe that's where your limit is, and then just experiment with it with consultation with your doctor. So for CDP choline, since I forgot it, I believe it's anywhere from 500 milligrams on the low end grams. And I'm only assuming, I think it's a safe assumption, that the 4 grams is because there's only 18% choline in it. So you got to take more of it in order to get a significant amount of choline. If you're taking 4 grams, that's what, just under 800 milligrams of choline if you're taking 4 grams of CDP choline. But then again, I'm not saying CDP choline is bad. So yeah, you would start off maybe with 500 milligrams and then assess your tolerance. If you get a great effect with it, then hey, don't change what works. Stick with that. With Alpha-GPC, the dosage is anywhere from 600 milligrams. So see, it's on that. It's able to cross the blood-brain barrier easy, and it's got the more choline content as compared to CDP choline, so you don't have to take as much. So 600 milligrams, I think, no, pardon me, I think it's 300 to 600 milligrams is the dosage range. Now, you will see, if you do any reading on it, 1,200 milligrams listed. I believe, and this goes back to what I was talking about with the rats and stuff in the human studies, that 1,200 milligrams, that was actually the dosage tested on people with a cognitive disorder. They may have had, maybe they had Alzheimer's or dementia or some sort of cognitive disorder, and they took 1,200 milligrams and they. So does that mean that there's going to be an issue if you take 1,200 milligrams? Maybe. I don't know. Everybody's different. You got to experiment with your doctor. But just like I talked about with choline bitartrate and CDP choline, 50 milligrams, and then go to 300, and then maybe go to 600. Slowly build yourself up. And again, if you're getting great results with 300, then why break? Why try to fix what's not broken? Stick with it like that. Everybody's different. One person get great results on 150 milligrams Alpha-GPC. I've seen YouTube videos where people get headaches taking 100 Alpha-GPC. So general side effects from it. Well, yeah, those are the side effects that you may experience with it. And we also cover the dosages of CDP choline and Alpha-GPC. So then we get to the fun. Is that what would I take? I'm not going to recommend that you all take anything, because I don't know if you talked to your doctor. I don't know your medical history, and I'm not qualified to give you that advice. I mean, if you ask me, I would say, well, here's suggestions, but disclaimer, I'm not responsible for anything that you do. You got to be responsible for yourself. And the answer is, what choline would I take of the 3 that I would take? It depends. If my doctor tells me, Howard, you're getting fatty liver disease, and then you could be headed towards getting NASH, non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, I suggest you start taking choline just to try to correct this as soon as possible. Well, in that case, knowing what I know now, I would probably just buy choline bitartrate. For the most part, it's cheapest of the 3. And for general health, obviously the doctor's probably going to give me a dosage to take, but the 250 dose range for the general health, more than likely do the trick. If I'm not concerned with the nootropic factor of it, I'm just concerned with liver health, well, I don't need to buy the expensive alpha or the more expensive than choline bitartrate, CDP choline. I don't need the expensive brand if I'm just looking just for general liver health. So I would probably then just take choline bitartrate. Or you could just eat more foods with choline in it. But if you're wanting to take supplements. Now, for nootropic, then I would prefer to use Alpha-GPC. It can go all. It has more choline content than CDP-choline. You can even get up to the 50% range. The half-life for Alpha-GPC, and this is strict. I didn't write this down. I didn't even put this in my notes. I think it's like 5 hours, so the half-life is a lot less. If you gave me the both of them, like, hey, you have choline bitartrate, I wouldn't take that for nootropic purposes. That's just me, unless it was really really high dose. Um, but then I would rather just take CDP choline or Alpha GPC. But if I had to choose between the two, then it's like, yeah, I'm going to choose Alpha GPC. I don't choline, I would take it, but if I had to choose between the two, it would be Alpha GPC. It makes me a little bit nervous with the long half life, but I think just combined with the choline content, the short half life, the lower dosage, the potential for maybe increasing power output and growth hormone. Um, I just think that for me, alpha GPC would be preferred over CDP choline, even though CDP choline, as we explained, has plenty of positives on it. So that's it. 2 hours and 16 minutes. I think since all my rambling at the beginning, it was maybe around 2 hours, which is kind of what I expected it to be, about 2 hours. That is it, folks. It being on YouTube live, it's not nerve wracking. It's just I'm constantly. If you're watching the video, I'm looking off to like the left. I'm looking at for whatever reason, I feels more comfortable looking at my reflection, I guess, or whatever in the screen than it is just to look at the camera. This camera also has that red light on it, and it just irritates my eyes when I look at it. So it's easier just to look at me, even though the ladies say I'm not very great to look at. So oh well, that's life. But yeah, that's it. I really hope that you enjoyed watching and or listening to this episode. I will put this up as a video on YouTube. I know it's a lot of information, um, and it will also be an audio format. If you listen to podcasts on Spotify, the video will be up on Spotify as well to watch. And yeah, please let me know if I got anything wrong, I need to correct anything, or if you just have any questions in general on this. I'll be happy to help out as best as I can. And my contact information will be in the description of the video, as well as in the description of the podcast. And yeah, if you enjoyed the show, you're finding value in it, then please share. Share with anybody you think that might benefit from it. Comment on the YouTube video. If you're listening in any major podcast platform, please give it a 5-star rating if you find value in this. So yeah, this is the culmination of a lot of months of work to get all this information here to put out for you all. So with that said, it's Howard checking out from Howard's Blend, the first episode in like 6 months. And until next time, I'm gonna go eat some liver. Adios.